So our objective with Axle is really radical simplicity. We have to make the product so easy to install and to use that people can just basically bring it up and start running it in an afternoon. For that to happen, several things had to be pretty different from traditional media asset management. The user interface had to be very, very modern, very clean, very kind of iPad like. It needs to run on a variety of web browsers. We felt very strongly that if you make people install software and update the software on each of the workstations, that you're adding a lot of complexity to the system and making the deployments much more difficult. Um, we thought it was important that it support both local and cloud backends so that you can log in locally or remotely. And basically, you have to be able to use it straight out of the box. You shouldn't have to, go through a manual just to become a typical user of the product. Finally, we really wanted it to be integrated with a lot of interesting third parties. The industry has become very diverse, and there are tremendous companies doing things like transcoding, ingest, storage, archiving. We wanted to be able to connect to as many of these as possible. So this is what the front end looks like. I won't spend very long on this slide because Patrice will be doing an in-depth demo. The important point is that the user interface supports Safari, Internet Explorer, Chrome, and Firefox. And as I mentioned, it already supports iOS browsers. In fact, this is the view on the iPad. It's very similar to what it looks like on desktop browsers. The difference is that we've kind of streamlined it a bit, gotten rid of the left column, which comes out in a pull-out panel. But Axle is really built for access from iPads and from a lot of the mobile lightweight devices that are coming over the next few years. That doesn't mean you can't use it from desktops. It's even more powerful in a desktop view. But it's our sense that particularly for review and approval applications, people want things to be easy and sort of come to them wherever they are. Another really big difference between Axle and traditional asset management systems is the way you install it and use it. So traditionally, these systems have kind of sat between the editing workstations and the storage. Instead of just reading and writing to your storage and having your file system the way you know it, they set up this layer where you have to check things in. And then the asset management system worries about where it's stored. The problem with that is that it involves pretty significant retraining of how people work. It also means that whatever you're used to doing in your storage, you now have to do something slightly different. And it makes it more difficult, for instance, to bring in freelancers or people that are not familiar with your system because they've got to be retrained. It also makes it more difficult on the vendor because any downtime in the asset management system is essentially downtime for the whole facility. So the media asset management systems are mission critical because of where they sit in the workflow. What we wanted to do is something much more lightweight. So essentially, our software talks from the edges of your network as if it was a workstation, and it watches the storage while you're working on it. It doesn't dictate how you use that storage. So if you have a folder system that you're comfortable with, if you have a way of organizing multiple tiers of storage that you're comfortable with, typically Axle is going to sit on top of those and not demand that you do something different. It then pushes out the browser interface to your editing clients and to your desktops wherever they are, but it also can push that same interface or flavors of it out to mobile devices. And so we're shipping the iPad interface today, and we're in development on an iPhone interface and Android. The hardware is also pretty lightweight compared to what a traditional asset management system would be, but still very powerful. So we're using Mac Minis as our back ends. The new ones use quad-core Intel i7 CPUs. You can configure them with up to 16 gigabytes of RAM. We recommend 8 is fine. They use this Fusion solid state and hard disk drive. And they have things like gigabit Ethernet out the back and also Thunderbolt, so that if you have a SAN, for instance, with a fiber channel, you can connect to it through the Thunderbolt adapter. Pricing is also very reasonable compared to what people are used to spending for high-end asset management systems. A 5-user system of Axle is $1,295, and each additional 5 users cost the same amount. Annual support is $295 a year for each block of 5. And we've just come out with an XML import-export utility that costs $500, which is used for either migrating data from older systems like Final Cut Server or for maintaining a a loose synchronization with cloud systems. We can answer questions about that later. It's not something that makes for a great demo, but essentially you can import and export metadata from a variety of systems using XML translators. Finally, there's a module that we recommend highly, which is Telestream Episode Pro. So we have a very good relationship with Telestream, and we're able to license Episode Pro along with Axel. The advantages that it brings are essentially the ability to transcode a much wider range of incoming formats. So Axel automatically will transcode whatever it finds in your file system, and it handles most of the mainstream video formats. But when you add Episode Pro, you get many more formats, including things like DNX HD, some of the higher end ProRes formats, and a number of AVCI and DVC Pro formats that go well beyond what the built-in transcoder in Axel is able to do. It also gives you the ability to transcode out to a variety of formats. So you can create, for instance, custom exports, export for iTunes, export for YouTube, things like that, as well as broadcast formats like OP1A. So that Episode Pro module adds a lot to the system. And then the Mac Minis are still very powerful, but are affordable and compact. We've just announced a new kind of packaging of this, which we call Axel Gear. And this is a 1U appliance. It just fits in a standard rack, but it includes pretty much everything we have to offer. 2 Mac Minis, one of them is running Axel, the other one is running Episode Pro, and they work closely together, so you essentially have a coupling of the 2 systems. You have a 5-user license with a year of support, Episode Pro with a year of support, and it's pre-configured so that one of our dealers can come in and install it for you, typically in the space of a couple of hours, and connect it up to your storage. So very straightforward to use and kind of one price, $7,000.